Clara lived in a small, quiet town where life moved slowly, and people knew each other by name. She was a simple woman with a kind heart and a gentle smile. Music had always been a part of her life, though she had never sought fame or recognition. Her piano was her companion, sitting by the window in her small living room. She spent hours playing, letting her fingers move across the keys, creating melodies that reflected her moods and feelings. Sometimes it was soft and tender. Other times it was lively and spirited, but always it was true to her heart. One sunny afternoon, the town announced a music festival that would feature some of the best performers from the region. Clara had never attended such an event before, but she felt a quiet excitement about hearing other people play. She walked through the festival grounds, listening to different performances, the sound of various instruments blending in the warm air. Children ran around, laughter mingled with music, and the smell of fresh pastries from nearby stalls added to the lively atmosphere. Clara felt a sense of belonging, as if music had drawn everyone together for a single purpose. In the middle of the festival stood Leonard, a famous pianist known not only for his incredible skill but also for his pride. He carried himself with an air of superiority, wearing a crisp suit and a faint smile that suggested he believed himself above everyone else. His hands moved effortlessly across the piano keys during his performance, producing notes that were precise and perfect. People watched in awe, clapping and whispering about his mastery, while Leonard soaked in the admiration, his eyes scanning the crowd with quiet judgment. As Clara watched from a distance, she felt a mix of admiration and nervousness. She had played the piano all her life, but always in private, always for herself. Seeing someone play with such skill and confidence both inspired and intimidated her. Yet there was something distant in Leonard's performance, something cold. She realized that while his playing was technically perfect, it lacked warmth, a human touch that connected directly to the heart. Her own music, though unrefined, carried emotion that came from living a full and simple life. Leonard's gaze fell on Clara, and he noticed the way she moved slightly to the rhythm, her eyes closed, a soft smile on her lips. He could tell she played, though she had no stage presence or polished technique. In his mind, he labeled her as an amateur, a mere admirer of music rather than a true musician. Yet there was a hint of curiosity. Why did she seem so absorbed, so content with the music? As if she understood it in a way many others did not. After his performance, Leonard approached Clara, his expression a mix of amusement and arrogance. He spoke with a confident tone, almost teasing. "You enjoy music, I see, but I wonder, can someone like you truly match what I do?" Clara blinked, caught off guard by his words. She was unsure whether he meant to challenge her or was simply mocking her. She responded quietly, with a touch of curiosity, "I play for myself, not for comparison." Her words were calm, sincere, and unassuming, reflecting her natural confidence and love for music. Leonard chuckled, not convinced. "For yourself? Music is meant to be tested, to be shared with skill. I propose a piano duel. Let us see whose music can truly move others." The crowd around them murmured, intrigued by the sudden tension. Clara hesitated. She had never competed, never performed publicly in such a manner. Her hands trembled slightly at the thought, but her heart felt a quiet determination. She loved music too much to walk away from a challenge, even when posed by someone so intimidating. After a moment of silence, she nodded. "Very well. I accept." Leonard's smile widened, confident that this would be an easy victory. The crowd cheered at the unexpected announcement, buzzing with excitement. Everyone wanted to see how a simple woman would face a renowned pianist. Clara felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation. She wondered if she had made a mistake, but a small, steady voice inside reminded her that this was an opportunity to share her music with others, and that thought gave her courage. The next few days were filled with preparation. Clara returned home, sitting at her piano and playing the melodies she loved, trying to refine her feelings into something that could be shared. She did not follow formal rules or practice complicated pieces. Instead, she let her heart guide her, creating music that was honest and alive. She experimented with rhythm and tempo, allowing herself to improvise, finding moments of beauty and simplicity. Each note was a reflection of her thoughts, her experiences, and the quiet joys and sorrows of her life. Meanwhile, Leonard practiced in a different manner. His sessions were strict and disciplined, focusing on flawless execution, speed, and precision. He repeated scales and complex compositions, adjusting each movement to perfection. In his mind, he was preparing to showcase superiority, expecting admiration and awe. Yet beneath his confidence, there was a slight unease. Clara had accepted the challenge, and the curiosity that initially led him to issue it now lingered as a faint tension in his thoughts. He wondered how someone so simple could approach such a duel. He dismissed the feeling quickly, attributing it to unnecessary worry. As the day of the duel approached, the town hall was filled with anticipation. Posters had been placed around town announcing the unusual challenge, and people were eager to witness the event. Children tugged at their parents' hands, elders shared stories of previous performances, and young musicians quietly practiced in the corners, inspired by the upcoming contest. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of excitement, curiosity, and the expectation of drama. Clara arrived at the hall early, sitting at the piano with a quiet calm. She looked around, noticing the people who had come to watch, and took a deep breath. She reminded herself that she was not there to prove superiority, but to share her music, to let it speak for her in its own way. Her hands hovered over the keys, and she felt the familiar connection, the way music flowed from her mind to her fingers. Despite her nerves, a sense of peace settled over her. Leonard arrived shortly after, exuding confidence. He approached the piano with a poised and commanding presence, waving to the audience as if acknowledging their admiration was a mere formality. He looked at Clara, his eyes narrowing slightly in a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. He assumed victory was inevitable, and yet he could not ignore the quiet strength he sensed in her demeanor. He shook his head subtly, dismissing it as inconsequential, and focused on the performance ahead. The duel began with Leonard playing a piece that was technically brilliant, full of complex passages and rapid movements. Each note was executed perfectly, demonstrating his mastery and control. The audience clapped politely, impressed by the skill on display, yet some felt a certain coldness, a lack of warmth in the music. Clara watched quietly, letting the sound envelop her. She felt no intimidation, only inspiration, and a desire to respond in her own way. When it was Clara's turn, she sat at the piano, feeling the smooth keys beneath her fingers. She began with a simple melody, soft and tentative, almost like a whisper. The notes were gentle, flowing naturally, and carried a warmth that immediately caught the attention of the audience. People leaned forward, curious, as if sensing something unique in her approach. Clara's music did not rely on speed or complexity. It relied on honesty, emotion, and the simple beauty of sound that resonated with human feeling. As she continued, Clara's confidence grew. She allowed herself to improvise, adding subtle variations and inflections that mirrored the emotions she wanted to convey. The audience was captivated, whispering among themselves and sharing glances that reflected surprise and admiration. Leonard watched initially with disdain, expecting a weak performance, but gradually his expression shifted from arrogance to disbelief. He realized that Clara was not merely playing notes. She was telling a story, conveying a depth of feeling that technical mastery alone could not achieve. Clara played with her whole being, every note infused with sincerity. Her music seemed to touch each person in the room differently, awakening memories, emotions, and a sense of connection. Leonard, for the first time, felt a pang of doubt and humility. He had underestimated her, assuming that skill alone determined value, and now he was confronted with a truth he had rarely faced. Genuine emotion and heartfelt expression could surpass even the most polished technique. The room seemed to hold its breath, the audience fully immersed in the music. Clara's performance was not about competition. It was about sharing a part of herself, and that made it powerful in a way that words could not capture. After the initial performances, the room was buzzing with excitement and whispers. Clara stepped back from the piano, her hand still tingling from the music. She had poured her heart into each note, feeling every emotion as it flowed through her. The applause from the audience was warm and heartfelt, yet she remained humble, quietly acknowledging the response. She did not play to impress. She played because it was a part of her life, a language she could speak without words. Leonard, on the other hand, was taken aback. He had expected an easy victory, yet he now felt a sense of unease. Clara's music, though simple, carried something he could not replicate with his precision and training. He replayed the notes in his mind, trying to dissect what made them so moving. Each sound was unpolished but resonated deeply with emotion. For the first time, he experienced doubt and a humbling realization. True music could not be measured by technical skill alone. In the days following the duel, Clara returned to her piano with renewed focus. She did not attempt to change her style or imitate Leonard's complexity. Instead, she explored her own strengths, allowing herself to experiment with rhythm, tempo, and melody. She discovered new ways to express her feelings, sometimes playful, sometimes melancholy, and occasionally a mix of both. Her living room became a sanctuary where the music flowed freely, unbounded by rules or expectations. Leonard, meanwhile, intensified his practice. He prepared elaborate compositions, believing that showcasing technical mastery would secure his reputation. He spent hours perfecting each piece, repeating passages tirelessly and adjusting the slightest details. His focus was relentless, yet there was an underlying tension he could not shake. Clara's unexpected skill lingered in his mind, a reminder that mastery of technique did not guarantee the power to touch hearts. His confidence, previously unwavering, now wavered in subtle but significant ways. The town began to take notice of the unusual rivalry. People spoke about Clara and Leonard with excitement and curiosity. Some admired Clara's courage in accepting the challenge, while others speculated whether her simple approach could truly rival Leonard's refined skill. Children practiced at their own pianos, inspired by her bravery, while seasoned musicians quietly observed, intrigued by the contrast between raw emotion and technical perfection. The anticipation for the next performance grew, creating a sense of community and shared curiosity about the unfolding story. Clara continued her private preparations with a calm determination. She did not seek validation, but the support from her neighbors and friends encouraged her. She experimented with harmonies, adding small, unexpected twists to her melodies. She practiced improvisation, letting her hands move intuitively across the keys, trusting her instincts to guide her. Each session strengthened her confidence and deepened her understanding of how to convey emotion through music. She found that the more she allowed herself to feel, the more her music connected with the listeners, even in her quiet home. Leonard observed her progress indirectly, hearing about her practices and the growing interest of the town. His curiosity transformed into a subtle admiration he struggled to acknowledge. He realized that Clara's music was authentic, a reflection of her life and experiences, while his own performances, though technically impressive, sometimes lacked soul. He began to wonder if there was more to music than precision, and whether he had been too focused on skill alone. This realization unsettled him, yet sparked an interest he had not felt in years, a desire to understand and embrace a more heartfelt approach. As the day of the next performance approached, tension grew. Clara felt a quiet excitement mixed with nerves. She wanted to share her music, but she also wanted to remain true to herself. Leonard, meanwhile, felt a complex mix of confidence and apprehension. He had prepared meticulously, but Clara's authenticity weighed on him. He could not ignore the possibility that she might surprise everyone once again, challenging not only his skill but his understanding of what music could truly be. On the morning of the performance, Clara woke early, taking a moment to breathe and center herself. She walked to her piano and played softly, letting the notes calm her mind. She focused on emotion rather than perfection, reminding herself that music was about connection, not competition. Each key she pressed was a reflection of her feelings, a story she wanted to tell. The simplicity of her approach gave her strength and clarity, and she felt ready to face the audience once more. Leonard arrived at the venue, his usual confidence tempered by the memory of Clara's previous performance. He approached the piano with a mixture of anticipation and tension. He played through his pieces with precision, noticing the audience's reactions, and yet he could not shake the memory of Clara's music. Each note he had heard lingered in his mind, a quiet challenge that unsettled his usual assurance. For the first time, he felt the weight of genuine competition, not based solely on skill but on the power to move people emotionally. The hall filled quickly with townspeople, each eager to witness the next chapter of this unexpected rivalry. The air was electric, buzzing with curiosity and excitement. Everyone remembered the previous performance, wondering how Clara and Leonard would approach this new stage. Some whispered about the potential for a repeat of Clara's emotional impact, while others speculated on Leonard's ability to reassert his technical superiority. The contrast between expectation and reality created a sense of anticipation that enveloped the entire room. When Clara stepped onto the stage, she felt a calm focus. She did not seek to impress. She sought only to share her music. She placed her hands on the keys, allowing the familiar connection to flow. The first notes were gentle, almost tentative, but they gradually grew stronger and more confident. The audience leaned in, drawn by the authenticity of her playing. Each melody carried emotion, telling a story of simple joys, quiet sorrows, and heartfelt reflections. Clara's music was unpolished, but it was alive, resonating with everyone in the room. Leonard began his performance shortly after, executing technically complex pieces with precision and speed. The audience clapped at his mastery, acknowledging his skill. Yet as the music continued, some began to notice a certain rigidity, a lack of warmth compared to Clara's expressive melodies. Leonard noticed this too, feeling a subtle frustration. He had focused on perfection, and yet it seemed that perfection alone was not enough to captivate the audience fully. The comparison weighed on him, forcing him to confront the possibility that his approach, though flawless, lacked emotional depth. Clara's turn came again, and she allowed herself to play with complete freedom. She improvised slightly, adding nuances and variations that reflected her mood and the energy of the audience. Her fingers moved intuitively, guided by feeling rather than strict technique. The melodies grew richer and her confidence blossomed. People in the audience were visibly moved, some closing their eyes to absorb the music fully, while others leaned forward, captivated by the authenticity and emotion Clara conveyed. Her playing was a conversation, not a display, and it resonated deeply. As the performance continued, Leonard's thoughts shifted. He watched Clara with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Her music was not flawless in the technical sense, but it had something he had rarely encountered: a soul. The audience responded not just to the notes, but to the emotion behind them. Leonard realized that music could touch hearts in ways that skill alone could not achieve. He felt a pang of regret for underestimating her, and a growing respect for the simplicity and sincerity of her approach. The realization was humbling, and he found himself reconsidering his own relationship with music. The day of the duel had arrived, and the town hall was buzzing with excitement. Clara had spent the morning in quiet preparation, sitting at her piano and letting her fingers move over the keys as she always did, finding a sense of calm in the familiar rhythm. She reminded herself that she was not there to compete for pride or recognition, but to share the music that lived in her heart. Each note she played felt like a conversation with the world, simple and honest yet full of emotion. Leonard, on the other hand, arrived at the hall with a confident stride. He carried himself with the poise of a seasoned performer, his mind focused on the technical perfection of his pieces. Yet beneath his composed exterior there was a flicker of unease. Clara's previous performances had unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. He knew her skill was different from his own, not in complexity but in the ability to move people deeply. That thought lingered, making him question whether sheer mastery could guarantee a victory that mattered. The audience filled the hall, whispers and murmurs of anticipation spreading through the crowd. Townspeople, young and old, had gathered to witness this unusual contest. Some were curious, some skeptical, but all were eager to see the contrast between Clara's simplicity and Leonard's precision. Children fidgeted in their seats, eyes wide with wonder, while older attendees recalled past performances in the town, intrigued by this unexpected challenge. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation and excitement. Leonard began the duel with a flourish. His fingers flew across the keys, executing complicated arpeggios and rapid scales with impeccable accuracy. The music was technically flawless, leaving the audience impressed and silent in admiration. His performance showcased years of training and discipline, a display of skill that few could match. Leonard watched the audience closely, expecting awe and admiration to reinforce his superiority. For a moment, everything seemed as he had planned, until he noticed subtle shifts in the crowd's attention. Clara stepped forward, her hands hovering over the keys with a quiet confidence. She began to play a soft, simple melody, almost like a whisper that carried through the hall. Her notes were not complex, but they were filled with feeling, each one conveying emotion that the audience could sense intuitively. People leaned forward, drawn in by the honesty and warmth of her music. There was no attempt to impress with speed or complexity. Instead, every note spoke directly to the heart. As Clara continued, the music flowed naturally, guided by her instincts and emotions. She added small flourishes, gentle variations that made the melody uniquely hers. The audience responded in a way that surprised even her. Some closed their eyes, allowing the music to wash over them, while others smiled, touched by the simplicity and beauty of what they were hearing. Clara's performance was not about showing skill. It was about connecting, about sharing something real and human. Leonard watched, initially with disbelief. He had expected a timid performance, perhaps a clumsy attempt at melody, yet Clara's music was captivating. It was alive, vibrant, and expressive in ways he could not replicate through sheer technique. He felt a strange mix of emotions: admiration, surprise, and a hint of regret. He realized that while his fingers could execute flawless notes, they could not convey the depth of feeling that Clara had poured into her performance. The audience's reactions only deepened his awareness of this truth. Clara allowed herself to play freely, trusting her instincts and emotions to guide her. Each key she pressed was a reflection of her experiences, her joys, and the quiet sorrows she had known. Her music told a story, one that transcended skill and technique, reaching directly into the hearts of those listening. Leonard attempted to regain the audience's attention with another complex piece, but the contrast was striking. His performance was technically brilliant, but it felt cold, mechanical, and detached compared to the warmth of Clara's playing. The audience's focus gradually shifted toward Clara, and Leonard could see their reactions. People were moved, captivated by the authenticity of her music. Whispers of admiration spread through the hall, and the applause that followed each section of her performance was heartfelt and genuine. Leonard felt a pang of humility and regret. He had underestimated her, assuming that simplicity could never rival technical mastery. Now he understood that emotion, honesty, and connection could surpass skill in its ability to touch people deeply. Clara continued to improvise subtly, adding soft variations and flourishes that enhanced the emotional impact of her music. The hall seemed to respond in unison, as if the audience itself was part of the performance. Each note was a conversation, each pause a moment to reflect. Leonard watched closely, feeling a sense of awe mixed with self-reflection. He realized that true mastery was not just about flawless execution, but about creating an experience that moved and inspired others. As the performance progressed, Leonard's initial pride began to fade. He recognized the power of Clara's simplicity and her ability to communicate through music. For the first time, he felt the weight of genuine competition, not in terms of technical skill, but in the ability to evoke emotion. Clara's music was a revelation, a reminder that the heart could express what the mind alone could not. He began to see the limitations of his own approach, and a desire to understand and learn from her authenticity took root. Clara's performance reached its crescendo, not with a display of speed or complexity, but with a melody that was full of warmth and emotional resonance. The audience erupted in applause not for technical perfection, but for the genuine beauty of what they had experienced. Leonard, standing at the side, felt a mixture of respect, regret, and inspiration. He understood that he had been challenged in a way he had never anticipated, forced to confront the idea that music was more than skill. It was an expression of the soul. The duel ended, and Clara sat quietly, breathing deeply, aware of the impact her music had made. She felt no triumph in the conventional sense, only a quiet satisfaction that she had shared her heart. Leonard approached her, his usual arrogance softened by humility. He extended a hand not in condescension but in genuine respect. "Your music? It is remarkable," he said quietly. Clara accepted his gesture with a gentle nod, acknowledging the sincerity in his words. The audience remained captivated, not just by the duel itself, but by the unexpected lesson it conveyed. They had witnessed something rare, the power of simplicity and emotion to outshine technical skill. Children, inspired by Clara's courage and authenticity, whispered about trying new melodies. Older attendees reflected on their own experiences, realizing that true expression often lay in honesty rather than perfection. Leonard, standing quietly, absorbed the lesson, feeling a change within himself that would influence his music for years to come. As Clara left the stage, she felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. She had played from the heart, and that was all that mattered. Leonard lingered, replaying her melodies in his mind, reflecting on the depth and truth they conveyed. For him, the duel had become more than a contest of skill. It had become a journey of understanding, humility, and recognition of the true essence of music. The day ended with applause, admiration, and a quiet sense of wonder, as both musicians and audience members carried the experience with them, changed in subtle but lasting ways. The next few days after the duel were filled with reflection and conversation. Clara returned to her quiet life, her days punctuated by soft melodies on her piano. She did not feel the need to boast or seek recognition. The warmth she had seen in the eyes of the audience and the reaction of Leonard were enough for her. She played simply because it brought her joy and allowed her to express emotions that words could not capture. Music remained her companion, her solace, and her voice. Leonard, however, found himself restless. The memory of Clara's performance lingered in his mind, her melodies echoing in places he had not expected. He could not stop thinking about how her music, untrained yet heartfelt, had moved the audience in ways his technical mastery could not. Every time he sat at his piano, he felt a tension between precision and emotion, between control and freedom. His practice sessions became less about flawless execution and more about exploring feeling, experimenting with ways to connect beyond notes and technique. He began to listen differently, paying attention to Clara's approach, which he had dismissed before. He realized that her music was not just about playing notes, but about storytelling. Each phrase carried a part of her life, her experiences, and her observations. It was sincere and honest, and that honesty had power. Leonard felt a mixture of admiration and humility. For the first time, he understood that music was not simply a contest of skill. It was a bridge between people's hearts. Clara, in her modest home, continued to experiment with melodies. She tried new harmonies and rhythms, exploring improvisation further. She discovered that the more she allowed herself to feel and react to the music, the more alive it became. Sometimes she played quietly, reflecting on gentle memories. Other times she played with exuberance, letting joy and laughter pour into the room. The piano was not just an instrument, it was an extension of herself, a way to communicate in a language that transcended speech. News of the duel spread beyond the town, attracting attention from nearby communities. Musicians and listeners alike were curious about Clara, the simple woman who had moved an audience and challenged a renowned pianist. Some came to hear her play in person, while others sent letters and messages expressing admiration. Clara remained grounded, welcoming anyone who wished to listen, but she never sought fame or accolades. Her music remained genuine, a reflection of her heart and spirit, untouched by the desire for recognition. Leonard began visiting Clara occasionally, not as a competitor, but as a student and observer. He watched her play, noticing the subtleties of her expression, the small nuances that gave life to her music. He attempted to replicate some of her techniques, not out of imitation, but out of curiosity and respect. Over time, he realized that listening and observing Clara taught him more about the emotional depth of music than years of solo technical practice had. He began to incorporate subtle elements of her approach into his own performances, finding that audiences responded in new and unexpected ways. Their relationship evolved gradually. Leonard's arrogance softened, replaced by a sincere respect and a desire to learn. He began to understand that true musicianship required more than technical skill. It demanded empathy, connection, and authenticity. Clara, in turn, appreciated Leonard's willingness to change and learn, though she never saw herself as a teacher in the traditional sense. Their interactions were not about hierarchy or status, but about shared passion and mutual respect. The town continued to celebrate the uniqueness of their story. People would gather to hear them play, sometimes separately, sometimes together. Clara's simple melodies and Leonard's refined compositions blended in unexpected harmony, illustrating the balance between heart and skill. The audience responded with enthusiasm, but more importantly, with understanding. They recognized that music was a form of communication, a bridge that connected lives, emotions, and experiences. As weeks turned into months, Clara noticed subtle changes in herself as well. She had always played for personal satisfaction, but the awareness that others were touched by her music added a quiet confidence. She experimented with more complex melodies occasionally, not to compete with Leonard but to explore the limits of her own expression. She found joy in blending simplicity with occasional sophistication, discovering that both could coexist without compromising the authenticity of her music. Leonard's journey was equally transformative. His performances became richer and more expressive, integrating emotion and storytelling alongside technical brilliance. Audiences noticed a change in his music. It was no longer distant and mechanical but alive and resonant. His reputation grew not only for his skill, but for the emotional depth he had developed, inspired in part by Clara's influence. The duel that had begun as a challenge of pride evolved into a profound lesson about music, connection, and humility. One afternoon, Clara invited Leonard to her home for a casual session. They sat together at the piano, sharing melodies and exploring harmonies. There was no audience, no competition, just two musicians expressing themselves freely. Leonard played with care, observing Clara's approach while Clara continued to play from her heart, her music flowing naturally. They exchanged subtle nods and smiles, communicating through notes rather than words. It was a quiet, intimate moment, reflecting the journey they had shared since the duel began. The town continued to watch their evolving collaboration with interest. People spoke of the lessons learned from Clara and Leonard, that music was not about showing off skill but about sharing emotion, that humility and openness could lead to growth and understanding, that simplicity could be as powerful as complexity when it came from the heart. Children were inspired to play without fear. Adults found themselves moved by the authenticity of the performances, and musicians reconsidered their own approaches to music, seeking balance between technique and feeling. Over time, the rivalry that had started with pride and competition transformed into mutual inspiration. Leonard no longer saw Clara as a challenger, but as a partner in exploration. Clara never sought to overshadow Leonard. She simply continued to play honestly, allowing her music to speak for itself. The dynamic between them became a testament to the power of respect, learning, and genuine expression. Clara's influence extended beyond Leonard. Young musicians who heard her story began to embrace their own simplicity, realizing that authentic expression mattered more than perfection. Leonard's evolution inspired other skilled performers to integrate heart into their technique. Together, they had sparked a subtle transformation in the local music community, showing that true artistry encompassed both mastery and emotional resonance. Months passed, and Clara reflected on how much she had grown since the duel. She had discovered new depths in her own music, finding joy in exploration and improvisation. Her confidence had grown, not through competition or recognition, but through the understanding that sharing her heart with the world could touch lives in profound ways. She continued to play, each note a testament to her journey, her experiences, and her unwavering love for music. Leonard, too, reflected on the changes within himself. He had learned humility, empathy, and the importance of authenticity in music. His technical skill remained, but it was now complemented by emotional depth and sincerity. He had discovered that true musicianship was not just about impressing others, but about creating connections that resonated deeply. Clara's influence had reshaped his approach, and he carried that lesson forward in every performance. The story of the duel and its aftermath became a cherished part of the town's history. People remembered the day when a simple woman challenged a renowned pianist, and the lessons that emerged from it. It was a story of courage, humility, and the transformative power of music. Clara and Leonard's journey illustrated that talent was multifaceted, and that heart, honesty, and emotion could surpass even the most polished technique. Their legacy continued to inspire, showing that music at its core was a bridge between souls. Months after the duel, Clara continued to live her quiet life, her days gently shaped by the music she loved. She would sit at her piano in the morning sunlight, letting her fingers dance across the keys as her mind wandered through memories and emotions. Music had always been her sanctuary, and now it had become a bridge connecting her to a wider world, though she never sought the attention it brought. Each note she played told a story of her simple yet rich experiences, of her joys, her sorrows, and the quiet strength that had carried her through life. Leonard had changed in ways both visible and subtle. His performances had grown more expressive, and audiences noticed the warmth and soul that now accompanied his technical skill. He had learned humility and appreciation through Clara's example, and he carried that lesson with him in every note he played. Though still meticulous in his technique, he now understood that true music required heart as well as hands. He continued to visit Clara, not as a rival but as a fellow musician eager to explore emotion and melody with her. Their friendship, built on respect and shared love for music, had become a quiet foundation in both of their lives. The town, too, had embraced the lessons of the duel. Musicians who had once focused solely on precision now sought to integrate feeling into their performances. Children practiced with joy rather than fear of making mistakes, inspired by Clara's courage and authenticity. Even seasoned performers found themselves reconsidering their approach, discovering that audiences responded most to sincerity and connection rather than technical perfection alone. Clara and Leonard's journey had sparked a subtle, lasting transformation, teaching that music's true power lay in its ability to touch hearts. One afternoon, Clara received an invitation to perform at a small music gathering in a neighboring town. She felt a gentle nervousness, knowing this would be her first performance outside her familiar community. She reminded herself that she did not play for fame or recognition, but to share the stories and feelings that music allowed her to express. With calm determination, she accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to connect with more people and continue her journey as a musician. Leonard offered to accompany her, not as a teacher but as a supportive partner. Their collaboration was effortless. He followed her lead, allowing her melodies to guide their joint performance. They arrived at the gathering to find a room filled with curious listeners. The energy was warm, and the audience was eager to experience the harmony between the seasoned pianist and the simple woman whose music had captivated her town. Clara felt a quiet excitement sitting at the piano and preparing to share her heart through the keys. The performance began with Clara playing a gentle, flowing melody. The audience leaned forward, drawn in by the simplicity and sincerity of her music. Leonard complimented her playing with subtle harmonies, enhancing the emotional impact without overshadowing her unique voice. The room seemed to breathe with their music, each note resonating in the hearts of those listening. Clara's melodies were soft and tender at times, lively and spirited at others, but always authentic. People responded with smiles, tears, and quiet awe, touched by the emotional honesty of the performance. As the evening progressed, Clara allowed herself to explore new variations in her melodies. She experimented with rhythm and tone, improvising slightly while staying true to her style. Leonard followed intuitively, adapting his own playing to support and enrich her music. The collaboration became a conversation, a dance of sound that conveyed emotion beyond words. The audience was captivated, experiencing a rare connection that transcended technical skill, social status, or fame. It was the kind of performance that lingered in memory, leaving a gentle, lasting impression on everyone present. After the gathering, people approached Clara and Leonard, sharing their appreciation and reflections. Listeners spoke of how the music had touched them in unexpected ways, evoking memories and feelings that resonated deeply. Some admitted that they had never considered that simplicity could have such power, while others were inspired to approach their own music with more openness and emotion. Clara responded with humility, grateful for their kind words but reminding them that the music had always been about honesty and feeling, not competition or recognition. Leonard, too, acknowledged their feedback, understanding how his own growth had been shaped by learning from Clara. Over time, Clara became known not for showmanship but for the emotional truth of her music. She continued to play in her own home, at small gatherings, and occasionally in local events, always focusing on sharing her heart rather than impressing others. Her life remained simple, but the impact of her music extended beyond her quiet town, reaching people who were moved by the honesty and warmth of her melodies. Her reputation was built on authenticity, proving that genuine talent did not need elaborate displays or accolades to touch lives. Leonard's career also evolved. He became a more empathetic and thoughtful musician, integrating the lessons he had learned from Clara into every performance. His audience grew not only because of his technical skill, but because they could feel the emotion and humanity in his music. He understood that his true growth had come from embracing humility and learning to express more than notes and rhythm. The duel that had begun as a test of skill and pride had transformed him, shaping the artist he had become. Clara and Leonard occasionally performed together, not for competition, but for the sheer joy of creating music that connected with others. Their collaboration was a blend of simplicity and sophistication, heart and skill, authenticity and technique. Audiences were drawn not by the reputation of either performer but by the connection they witnessed, the honest, unpretentious power of music shared freely. Each performance reinforced the lesson that had been central to their journey. True artistry lies in the ability to touch hearts, not merely to impress eyes or ears. As Clara reflected on her journey, she realized how much had changed since the duel. She had gained confidence but not arrogance. She had learned that her music could inspire and connect, without compromising her simplicity. She had discovered the joy of collaboration, the power of authenticity, and the fulfillment that comes from sharing one's true self through art. Her piano continued to be her companion, a source of comfort and expression, as she played each day with gratitude for the life she had and the music she could share. Leonard, too, reflected on the profound impact Clara had had on him. Her approach to music had reshaped his understanding of artistry, guiding him to balance technical skill with emotional expression. He had learned humility, patience, and the importance of listening to music, to others, and to one's own heart. Their story became a quiet inspiration for musicians everywhere, a testament to the transformative power of connection, sincerity, and shared passion. Years later, people still spoke of the duel that had begun as a challenge of pride and skill, but ended as a story of growth, understanding, and emotional resonance. Clara and Leonard had shown that music was more than notes and technique. It was a bridge between hearts, a medium through which honesty and feeling could inspire, heal, and unite. Their journey stood as a reminder that talent and mastery are most powerful when paired with authenticity, compassion, and the courage to express one's true self. And through it all, Clara continued to play, her simple melodies carrying the profound truth that sometimes the quietest, most genuine voices leave the deepest marks on the world.